let's call the roll first, and then we'll get into some of the matters.
Jerry Atkins,
Here?
Larry Porter,
Here.
Jack Looney, Garland Land,
Yeah.
Joe Zach,
Here.
Mark McDonald,
Here.
Rick Dreyer,
Here.
Okay, I haven't heard from Jack, and I hope he's okay. Okay, can we have the approval of last time's minutes? And hang on, I gotta turn that off. Sorry. Oh, don't worry about it. It's the gal that wants to talk to me about my credit card. Yeah, no
Mr.
problem.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes for the September 19th meeting and the special meeting on October 3rd.
I second.
Any discussion about that? Okay, here is a new procedure. We have at one time or another called for a vote that's been a voice vote, and people at home haven't been able to see who does what and who voted which way. Then we started raising our hand, and some folks couldn't quite see that. So the new procedure is, and Christina will help us with this, every time we have a vote, we'll have a roll call. So it'll be a roll call vote so that we have a record of that procedure. So Christina, would you call the roll on the last motion?
Jerry Atkins,
And I should be last. Yeah. Okay, in case we have a tie.
okay,
Yeah, okay.
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Garland Land,
Yes.
Joe Zach,
Yes.
Mark McDonald,
Yes.
Rick Dreyer,
Yes.
Jerry Atkins,
Yes. Motion passes for the reading of the minutes. Some discussions on the roll call vote, which we just did, and Sarah may want to weigh in on that, as I understand it. And the appointment of two committees. We have in our procedures the possibility for subcommittees to study this or study that. And so I want to propose two committees today. One will discuss and look through the Bondurant decision. And we hope to come up with maybe just a page or two of summary so that you don't have to deal with 17 pages all the time, but maybe a smaller amount to look at. And the appointment for the Bondurant Committee, and that would be to study and review and report back, is Mark and Garland. And I've talked with them before, and they've accepted that responsibility. And then the second one is a subcommittee, a study committee for the rules and procedures. This is the thing that Garland primarily spent a lot of time on a year ago. We've been operating under that, but not well, probably as my leader. As the leader, I sometimes stay with that and sometimes don't. At any rate, the appointment of Rick and Larry to go over those procedures and report back. I'm not going to put a time limit on this, but if maybe we'd have a report on a monthly basis, and hopefully you'll be finished sometime in the next year or two, Mark. Yeah. So I would like to have a motion on that, then we'll discuss those.
I make a motion, we accept the committees as given.
Second.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
In your rules of procedure, you said committees shall consist of at least three. On your rules of
Thought it was
procedure,
two.
committees shall consist of at least three board members.
Okay, 1 second. Everybody has, by the way, a new packet, and I want to thank Mary and Christina for assisting in putting this thing together. And so if you want, we can turn to the rules and procedures. It's about 4 back. And then we can turn to the page. Where are you, Sarah?
Page 3.
Page 3.
Committee shall consist of 3 members. You're on each.
Mr. Chairman?
You're on both committees.
No, I got it.
Yeah, that's what, all you have to do. Isn't that all right, sir, if Jerry's on each committee?
Yeah, as I understood that, the chair was ex officio. Is that right?
The ex officio members don't vote.
Right.
So the committee would be made of 3 members, and you would have 3 members, voting members. That's how
Okay,
I would read this.
okay.
You-
Good enough. Then I'd like to appoint Joe onto the bond run committee. And I'd like to appoint Jack onto the procedures committee. That's 3. And then I would be there ex officio as I want or need. Motion for that?
I amend my motion and accept it as given now, that there be 3 on each committee. Is that all right, Sarah? Works for you?
And,
Like to have a second?
I'll
Yep.
second it. Proudly.
okay. All in favor, then we'll have a roll call.
Can I ask who seconded? I'm sorry.
Mark. Sarah, thanks for that, really. I had read this and I thought it was 2 plus me, so just one off, you know. Yeah. Do you have
thinks it-
anything else, by the way, about this section?
As far as,
Anything?
Anything? I haven't read that far.
You what?
I read the first
She's not
line.
on page 3.
I'm on page 3.
Sarah,
Page 3 of,
5.
Sarah, we don't want to put you in a corner. This committee, our committee will be contacting you on any questions
For
we
sure.
have.
Mhm.
Okay?
I'm happy to attend, so.
I knew you would be.
great, okay. Is that, anything else from you? No, you're good. Okay. Thank you so very much.
Call for vote.
Roll call?
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Garland Land,
Yes.
Joe Zach,
Yes.
Mark McDonald.
Here. Yep.
Rick Dreyer,
Yes.
Jerry Atkins.
Yes. Thanks for that. Okay, again, I want to bring up this packet that everybody has. I really hope that you'll go through it and use it, because there's been quite a little bit of effort to put it together. And this, by the way, is part of what I had asked for some time back about the helping new members come on and the orientation of them. And I think that this packet will at least go a long way so that they can not only learn where we are, but have questions about some of this. And which, by the way, some of our members have been going to water and the water plant and the power plant, and you haven't gone to the sewer plant yet.
No.
Okay, great. Well, pardon me? Yep. So at any rate, this is a major event, and I think it's a good one. And hope everybody uses it and brings it to the meetings, and we can refer to it by page and all. And that would be helpful to keep us together. Sometimes we have a document and nobody knows what they're talking about. Hopefully this will help. Okay. Dan Montgomery is going to report on the water department to us, and he has quite a presentation. And so Dan, drum roll, and there you are.
Here I am. So I thought first thing I'd do is talk about the water wholesale contracts today, because we're going to have the Sugar Creek wholesale contract come up after we talk about this. So you kind of get a history lesson. A couple of us in this room, I think Larry Porter, we were working at Missouri Water Company, so we kind of have the history. We lived this history. So this is what I put together to kind of explain it. So show you the history of the utility relates to how the wholesale water contracts were developed. In 1947, the Missouri Water Company bought the Independence Water Works. This is a 1948, I guess 1947 photo of Missouri Water Company office at the southwest corner of Kansas and Liberty. I think today this is a law office up off the square. The building's still there, but of course we've moved on. The Missouri Water Company was a private water utility that was governed by the Missouri Public Service Commission. The water utility had wholesale water contracts with 11 jurisdictions, which made up 50% of the water sales. So this was the office at Truman and Forest that we moved out of. In 1986, the Missouri Water Company entered into negotiations to sell all of its assets to the City of Independence. By purchasing the assets of the Missouri Water Company, Independence would be the successor to all the contract obligations. However, as I previously mentioned, the sale of the assets was subject to the approval of the Missouri Public Service Commission, who governed the private water utility. The wholesale customers intervened into the Public Service Commission proceedings in opposition to the sale of the assets unless certain amendments mutually agreeable to all parties were made. The following slides contain the negotiated language agreed to by both parties that is included in all contracts to date, including the Sugar Creek contract we'll be talking about in a minute. Let's see, maybe we'll go back to that. Sure, I have. So what I'll be reading, these are just short versions of what is in the actual contract. So what I read from my notes are the word-for-word choice of what is in most of the contracts. Any proposed rate increase by Independence shall be made in accordance with the base extra capacity method using the utility basis as described by the American Water Works Association M1 Manual, 7th edition, as amended and revised. I'm not just making this stuff up. This is all in these contracts.
I think you could make that up.
Yeah. So the water rates, this is an example of the M1 version. This was version 4. I think they're at version 7 now. They keep updating it. It's a technical document that they have. So this is what we would just reorder, the newest one, and be talking to finance to make sure we're doing everything according to. But if you're doing a cost of service study, we have to follow that exact way of doing it because of the language that was agreed upon by the wholesalers in the city at that time. So the rate study shall be obtained by Independence from a qualified independent engineering consultant such as Black & Veatch, Burns & McDonnell, or Equal. Again, those are the two people or two companies that they said back, I guess it's been 33 years ago, and or Equal. So if there's another firm that can do the same type of thing that everybody could agree upon. Independence will provide notification of any such proposed rate increase together with a copy of said rate study at least 75 days prior to the effective date of the proposed rate increase. So we make sure that once we do a cost of service study that we give the wholesaler 75-day notice before we go forward with the rate increase. Wholesalers shall also notify Independence of any disagreement with the proposed increase at least 30 days prior to the effective date of the proposed increase. Wholesalers shall provide Independence with a reason or reasons that they don't like what we put together. The proposed rate increase shall go into effect upon the effective date, provided, however, that if wholesaler continues to disagree with the rate increase, it may request that the increase be submitted to arbitration. Such rate arbitration shall be performed upon the following terms and conditions. I'm going to skip the 9 things unless you all would like for me to read those. But when we look at the wholesale contract a little bit later, Sugar Creek, you'll see A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 9 items that they have to go through if they want to take it to arbitration, who's going to pay for the arbitrator, who the arbitrators are, all that good, fine stuff. So I'm going to skip that part. Wholesalers shall have reasonable access during regular business hours to the books and records of Independence relevant to the administration of the water utility. We've not had a wholesaler ask that, but whoops. So anyway, they can ask that. We haven't had one do it yet. So they could ask to see our books and show us exactly what's going on. Independence it also covenants that in any rate increase proposed by a cost of service study, it will adopt a rate structure which will treat all wholesale customers on a fair and equitable basis and without favoritism for retail customers within independents. So they wrote this language in there. So I think at that time, the wholesalers believed that if the city took over, they would just basically make the wholesaler, these wholesale customers pay for everything. And so they wrote the language in there to prevent that from happening. Again, the sale wouldn't have went through had they not agreed to this language.
Question, Dan.
Yes.
You said the rate increases for wholesalers and the city customers. So if you ask for a rate increase with the
City-only customers?
only customers, do you ask for one with the wholesalers at that time or
Well,
not?
every rate increase since I've been here, I guess I was here when they sold it. So every one of them, they do a cost of service study. They go out and determine where the costs are being borne from, whether it's wholesalers, residential customers, industrial customers. And then the cost associated with those customers gets charged back to those customers. So then the answer is, when we've done it, every one we've done, we've had a rate increases to all different categories based on what their actual cost to service were at that time.
Okay.
So to answer, we've never gone through and said, we're just going to do a residential rate increase. That's not how our cost of service, we have to go out, we have to hire this consultant. They're going to look at it from the perspective of they're all water users. So how do we divide that cost out?
All right, yeah, that's what I was wanting to say, that we don't just arbitrarily say, okay, we're gonna have a 2% rate increase and everybody gets it.
You
When
can
you run
see,
that cost of study, does that cover the city users too?
absolutely.
Okay,
So you said we have the 45,000 customers, only 13 or 12 of them are wholesale customers, the ones we're talking about today. But we have industrial customers that would be like Unilever or the mall. Anybody that uses over 60,000 cubic feet a month would be an industrial customer if they weren't already a wholesale customer. The wholesale customers, what's unique about them is that we send the water to them at one spot. There are two spots, depending on how big they are. Like Lee Summit has 7.5 million gallons a day, 5 at one location, 2.5 at another location. They'd be metered at that location, but we do not do the billing for those wholesale customers. All we send them is a bill for those 4 meters in those 2 locations. So most all wholesalers have 2 meters, just to make sure that if something went south, that we'd have a way to read it.
all right, okay, thank you.
So it kind of leads into one of another questions they have, the concerns that the wholesalers had was increase. Independence agrees that the capital costs attributed to plant expansion and well field expansion made necessary by higher usage demands of other wholesale or retail customers will not be used in the calculation of a rate base for the purpose of determining the rates to be charged to wholesaler. What that means in English to me is that, say a wholesaler comes along and they want an extra 7 million gallons a day. Or let's say 6 could make it easy for me to talk about. Matt's shaking his head because he knows that all of our plant additions are in 6 MGD units. So if we had a 6 MGD unit and a wholesaler wanted to do that, that wholesaler would pay for the whole cost of doing that plant addition, all the cost, all the transmission mains associated with that, and they would bear that cost, and it would not be put into the rate increase to the other wholesalers or to the independents. Same thing would go for us. If we decided this is not what's going on. Back a few years ago, when I first came here, we had everything on at the plant. Now with the conservation, with the way, say you do a load of laundry, instead of 50 gallons, it's 5 gallons. So what we have excess capacity at the plant. We're not even thinking about adding to the plant to build more of it. And the transmission mains can handle it. Everybody's using less water. I don't know about electricity or any sewer. I guess it affects the sewer department. I'm looking at Mike. But anyway, so that has not been an issue for some time. We actually have excess capacity. We could sell it off. Since we own that, we could sell it off at the cost that we wanted to charge for that. And we had made an offer actually to, say, Lake City was looking at building a water plant. So we would look at whether we could serve them and how we would serve them, what cost. Yes.
And back on your earlier comment that you have 1 meter that goes to at least some or 2 meters, then do they charge their customers independently of what we charge our customers? Is there a differential? Can they charge?
They can charge them anything they want.
So
what we sell the wholesale water to all of our wholesale customers at the exact same rate, because that's the way the contracts have been written. So what they do is they turn around and they can mark it up however they want, because they don't have restrictions like what we have in our contracts, these perpetual contracts, which I'll get to that in a minute. But so the answer, all of our wholesalers sell their water at a higher rate than what we're selling it to our customers, except one, and that's Sugar Creek. And it's just a matter
so
of.
they're actually making a profit.
Well, I don't know that they're making a profit because I don't know what their cost of service is. So they've still got to have all their distribution piping, all their meter reading, their water towers. They've got to do storage. Everything that we do on the distribution side, they have to turn around and do in their area. So I would assume that everything they do is at their cost, because most of them are either regulated by a board, or if they were I guess if they were a private, I don't think there's any of them that are private, would be regulated by the Missouri Public Service Commission. So I would say they're all either a board or a city council. So that council in their area would control what they're charging their customers. I would never sit here and say that they're doing a markup on it, because I would find that hard to believe. And I have a survey we do once a year, and we look at that, what everybody's rates are, and that's in our budget every year. And I have that in my notebook if we wanted to get to that. But I would say that there's not a significant markup if there is a markup.
Yeah, Dan, McCarthy, maybe I can help answer each one of these, like Oak Grove, Green Valley. They all have their own meters in there. And most of them, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but most of them are doing it by gallons instead of cubic feet. We do ours by cubic foot. And they have to pay for meter readers. Mm-hmm. And like Dan said, the upkeep of their storage. Each one of them has a tank.
Most of them have AMI, Larry, actually.
Do they? You had to throw that in, didn't you?
I just had to throw it. It was an opportunity. Just had to say.
Zing!
And we table that for a couple of years.
Anyway, they still have they're covering their cost. However, I have received a bunch of phone calls from a certain town, I'll talk to you later about it, that they are afraid their city's paying for their whole city through their water department. So I don't know. We'll talk about that later. It's not on the agenda today. Thank you.
It doesn't benefit me to talk about that either, Larry. So.
Dan, one question I would have, and I understand about the plant, but what about when we have to recapitalize new pipelines to the wholesaler, or pumps that are required to be maintain the $500,000 that we spent on taking care of tanks? Some of those costs need to go back to the wholesalers.
They absolutely do.
And do you take that into account?
Anything above a 12-inch we call transmission main. So all transmission mains are in the cost of service that we do when we deal with the wholesaler. So 12-inch to 36-inch diameter mains, any maintenance on those, any of those mains that we run out in the system, the wholesalers help pay for. And they continue to help pay for the maintenance on them. Same thing goes for the maintenance on the pumps. Everything at the plant is shared by the wholesale customers. And because they take half the water, then they get half the cost.
Okay.
So it's very methodical, but that's how our cost of service study is done. And because it's done by these outside consultants, then all bets are off. They're not looking at any one customer as to who. They're just trying to get the cost where the costs are due.
When did we do our last cost of service, or whatever it's called?
Well, I'll get to that. I gave you a copy of the rates. I think it was 2012. Sarah just asked me this. Sarah, was it 2012? Yes. She's saying yes. So in the packet that we sent you, there was a rate C rate. If you pull up that rate C rate and look at that and see what year the first rate increase was, I think it was 2012. So the answer is that's when we last did the cost of service study. And it was a 5-year incremental increase at that time.
So we're getting ready to go into new contracts and we haven't done another.
No, we've done multiple cost of service studies in the last 33 years. Every time
I'm
we need
thinking in the last year.
every time we need a rate increase because we can't recover the cost that it's costing us to treat water,
Right.
we go out and do a cost of service study. All we got to do is go to the council members and say, this is what we'd come to the PUAB and say, hey, we need to do a cost of service study because we're not making enough money to do it. We can do that at any time. That whether all the contracts allow us to do is those are just self-renewing. Every 20 years they're going to re-up them. But the fact is, anytime we need to increase the rates, we would go out and ask for a cost of service study to be done. They can argue
And
about
we
it.
can do rate increases throughout the
Yes.
20-year contract.
Yes, we've done multiple rate
Okay.
increases. Yeah, there's probably been 10 or 12 that I know of. When the city first purchased this, we went, I want to say, 12 or 13 years without a rate increase because really what it amounted to was Missouri Water Company was paying 50% of all the revenue in taxes to Uncle Sam. There was no more taxes on it. So we went years and years and years where we didn't have an increase to our residential customers or our wholesale customers. Yes.
Quick one. When you do a rate increase, does that have to go back to the Public Service Commission?
No. See, that was a concern they had at the time when the city was negotiating to buy the utility, was because that would not be there anymore, somebody to check and a balance. They knew that it was all going to be the council members, and council members could say, well, we'll just have wholesalers pay for everything. Well, that's why they intervened into the rate case and said it's not going to happen. And they put all these stipulations in all these self-renewing contracts that every 20 years they're going to bring them back up and just renew them because there's no reason for them to not, they don't want us to be in total control. If our check and balance was the council, I don't know what council member, how they would want to respond to that. They might say that we're going to make the wholesalers pay for everything. Well, right now the wholesalers, because we don't have meter reading and distribution and all that, it's a half the water, but it's a third of the revenue. So a third of the revenue that we have coming into the utility traditionally is coming from the wholesale customers. Okay. And the final item, so I think we're on my last slide. You guys are helping me, though, asking these questions. This makes it easier for me to talk. But the water supply contract shall be renewed under the same terms and conditions herein stated at the end of each 20-year term hereof at the opinion. This is all legal talk. So when I'm reading this, I can't make this stuff up.
Your mouth, sir.
So which option can be exercised by the wholesaler given independence written notice at least 120 days prior to the termination of the existing term of contract. Wholesaler's intention to renew said contract. And I've also, I say, please note that almost all of the wholesale contracts were renewed a few years ago. So I gave you a sheet of paper. I gave you the rate C, but I also gave you a wholesale customers contract data sheet that it was in the packet. Just to give you an example, Blue Springs is a large customer of ours. That contract is up again in 2033. So it's a few years before these come up again. But I just wanted to give you a feel for what the other wholesale contracts, the ones that are being renewed, when they come up, we do renew them. But and we've done these cost of service studies. You've already beat me to the punch on my question.
I have one more question. I know we have troubles with we've been investigating a 30-inch line.
Okay.
Does Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and all the other Oak Grove and everybody else, do they have an option to not contribute to their portion of replacement of that 30-inch main?
That's not an option
Okay.
because that 30-inch main serves Lee Summit, serves everybody
Yeah, I
else
would
south.
think that'd be a big
So what we
component.
do is, again, anything that's 12-inch and above, we call a transmission main. Anything 12-inch, they have a different chart of accounts. So anytime we do maintenance on that, or we repair it, or if we tear up 24 Highway and Nolan Road and we spend $90,000 getting that all back in service in 3 or 4 days or whatever it was, then that's all part of what the wholesale customers are paying and contributing to. Because if it's above, it happened to be a 12-inch over the top of that 30-inch. We thought we had a leak on a 30-inch, but come to find out the good news is was on the 12-inch. But because the 12-inch is a transmission main, they're going to pay for that portion of that too. Even
How
though,
do they come back to us in increased rates, or
well,
they just
I
get
mean, it's
billed?
already coming back. So what would happen when they do a cost of service study? They do what they call a test year, and that test year is your past cost in that year of cost. So if we did a cost, we're not going to do a cost service study this year because we don't need the revenue. I mean, we're doing all right. But if we did, then that $80,000 would hit it. And all the other
We're going
$80,000.
to cover 80,000 until we do a cost of service study.
It will not. It'll only be in what I call a test year. My experience with cost of service studies, it would be whenever we go. It may be. It's probably not going to be a few years from now. You know, will I be here when the next one goes down? I don't know. But whenever it is, they do a test year. It was the last full calendar year, or in our case, fiscal year. That would be the test year. Whatever the costs were associated with all these different people, whether that was industrial, commercial, or residential, fire hydrants, everything we do, all those costs, we keep track of them every year. And then when that test year comes around, then that's how we would set the rates.
Dan?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes. I'm sorry.
If I heard you right, you said half of the water, third of the revenue.
Yes.
Explain that.
Okay. So the reason why wholesale water is cheaper is because we don't have meter reading, we don't have billing, we don't have all the issues that, you know, maintenance on their transmission mains,
Okay.
maintenance on their meters, maintenance on their water towers. We don't have any of that.
Okay.
So therefore, they have to pay for that. So they're getting their water at a cost that was cheaper, but they still have to mark it up because they got to do all the other things that they do. And if they're growing, they're going to be laying transmission mains and distribution piping, all those things that we're not having to do.
Yeah, I understand.
Anything else?
Go for it.
Well, then I'll go to the last slide. It says, "Thank you for your time." So, and again, we get bronze. We're number 3 in the world this year on the water tasting, 29th Berkeley Springs testing. And I guess I can go sit down and we can talk about Sugar Creek if you want me to. That's all right.
Thank you.
Thanks lots,
Thank
Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Matt, I'm sure you're in on that. Thank you.
No, Matt didn't do that.
It's all about me.
Yeah.
So, is it all right to move on to the next item?
Yeah, you want to talk about?
Sure. On the Sugar Creek item, we've been negotiating with Sugar Creek about their 20 years was up, wanted to redo it. And so what I put forward was a memorandum to the city manager's office that this is what we're doing, we're negotiating. I passed it off to legal staff to review. Their legal staff reviewed it, and they actually ran with it, passed it at their council meeting. I guess they called it council. I don't know what Sugar Creek's, one of their aldermen or council, whatever they call it. But anyway, it was approved there, and what they sent back was an approved contract, which we will take. I was holding off on taking it to our council till after I met with you all, just to give you an opportunity to weigh in on whether you thought it was a good idea or not. I don't know that we got a lot of choice, but it's been a positive thing for the utility all these years. That third of the revenue, I think if Power and Light said they could wholesale half of their power outside of town, they would probably be doing a little better. It helps spread. Instead of 50,000 customers, we're sending this to 250,000 people. That's how many people drink our water. So it helps spread that cost out. So when we add a well or we replace a well, any kind of maintenance that we do, it gets spread to everyone, all these folks. So it's helped hold our costs down. I didn't give you a copy of the rates, but I mean of the rate comparison that we do. But Grand use $52 a month, and ours is $31 a month. I mean, Grandview, Raytown, Kansas City, Kansas, Belton, Harrisonville, Kansas City, Missouri, Blue Springs, Lee Summit, Liberty, Olathe, Raymore, and Overland Park are all charged higher than we do. And the only one that was lower than us was Sugar Creek. And, you know, they just have to do a cost of service study or whatever. I don't know how they set their rates, but they're a good customer. And
Of all those that you just mentioned, how many of them produce and pump their own water?
most of them have customers. Some of them might have three, like Blue Springs has Kansas City Water, Our Water, and Tri-County Water. So they have three sources of water. They can pick and choose who they want to,
I guess my only concern is we're taking on the responsibility, the risk, and maybe liability, I'm not sure, of producing the water, making sure it's at certain quality, and pumping it a certain distance. And I just want to make sure that the product that we have that's a bronze in the world is that we're getting a premium price for that. And evidently, when we're $20, their bill is $20 less a month, I'm not sure that we're getting the premium that we would like. But I don't know contractually what we can do or what we cannot do. But I enjoy Blue Springs and Lee Summit and all those folks that have good water. But at the same time, I don't see them cutting us any slack.
well, these were obviously negotiated. There would not have been a sale.
Right.
They would have objected. They did object to the Public Service Commission, and it goes back to that exact language that's in there. I'd have to go back and find it, but there's some language that specifically says that we cannot treat our internal customers. When you set a premium, you're never going to see me say that word. It's going to be a fair. I would believe that there's a 10% markup on all of our water. What's fair to an outside consultant is that you set that rate high enough that you get a return on it, but it's not what you would call a premium. It's 10% premium, because that's what it is. That's what it was when the cost of service study was done, was it like a 10% markup. But it was not, when you say premium, I don't know your definition and my definition or attorney's definition. I'd have to ask Sarah.
Well, you can either drive a Lexus or you can drive a Pinto. What we have is a Lexus, and it costs a heck of a lot more than a Pinto. That's what I call premium. And the quality of the water that we provide this community and the surrounding area is significant. And I don't know that we're getting proper compensation for that. But if there's a law or contract that we can't do anything, I think it's incumbent upon us that we do as many or the cost of service studies, I think, need to be closer to make sure that we are getting that 10% or whatever that number is, so that we don't let it sit out there for a number of years and try and capture it at a later date. That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's what we watch for, is to make sure that we're not losing money on all of it. I mean, but we have to treat everybody the same.
I smell it. I heard it. I taste it. I don't need anything else about it. At the same time, we need to do our due diligence to make sure that we're getting our return on our cost of service.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So, just to follow, I guess the quality of the water is that we're just by accident that we have good quality water, that our wells are in the right place and so forth. It isn't because
By accident?
I don't want.
We really don't need you guys at all. It's an
It's
accident.
pretty much what happens, but no, it's when Missouri Water Company made a decision in 1955 to build a plant, a Courtney Bend water treatment plant, they had an option to go to the Missouri River. That was the other option. They chose to take a more expensive route to pay for the wells, for the maintenance, and it's paid off. Yeah. I mean, we have some of the highest quality water. It's so consistent. There's not when Kansas City calls us and they're dealing with, eutrophication, turnover in the river, flooding upstream, all the things that cause their water to have to be treated something special, then that costs money, and it also creates customer complaints. We just don't see it. I mean, because it's the same thing over and over. I mean, if you've been down to the plant, you know that it's consistent. It's like being in a cave and having the spring water at 60 degrees rolling out of it, and we're taking that out of the ground and pumping it. And the other thing we have is we take like 1,000th of what runs by there every day. So we have pretty much an infinite supply. There's not very many utilities in the country that could say that.
And
Carl?
I don't want to be pejorative in using the word accident, but I guess the bigger point I want to make is I understand that, you know, we're locked into this contract and so forth. But I think if I can follow up on Mark's point, is how do we get around this contract? If we go out and improve our infrastructure somehow, does that, obviously it improves for our customers, but doesn't it also, the wholesalers have to bear part of the cost?
If it's a transmission main, we don't charge them for distribution piping. We don't charge them for fire hydrants, 6-inch, 8-inch, any of those smaller mains that are in a residential neighborhood. We do not charge those. Transmission main, yes. If it was due to, and it'd be maintenance at this stage, because until somebody has a reason that we would have to bring an extra 6 million gallons a day out of the plant and have to add a transmission main. Matt, you can help me. When was the last time we added a transmission main, a 36-inch?
2003.
2003. So we haven't added a transmission main in that time. When you add transmission mains, it drops the head pressure on the plant, and because otherwise, if you try to force a whole bunch of water through a system because there's so much growth and so much usage, then that's why you have to add transmission mains. We haven't had to do that since that date, and we probably won't. I'll probably never see another transmission main just because of all the water efficient devices that we have now, showers, everything you talk about, everybody, you know, instead of using 150 gallons a day per person, it might be 100. It's dropped off, and when that's dropped off, then our capacity is basically gone up. We have excess capacity. We have a 48 million gallon a day plant. We can expand on that, but we're running, 20 some odd million a day, you know, in the wintertime. Less than 30 in the summertime. So not an issue.
Garland, I'd like to interject something here. I'm a lot older than them two.
Not much, Larry.
We're sitting on a gold mine, number one. There's people all over this world wish they had our water. And a guy by the name of Mott years ago stumbled upon this, if you want to say by accident, and said, wow, we got this water down here that doesn't need to be treated very well. We just have to treat it minimal to get it to the customer. And that's what we have. Our main, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, our main cost is transmission and treatment of water. Is that right? And it's a minimal cost. It's probably half of what Kansas City has to treat theirs as far as cost, because they get theirs out of the river. And when he said that, you know, the transmission, and he said earlier, when you got a 30-inch main, if Lee Summit all of a sudden 50,000 people move into Lee Summit and we start pumping more water out there, they're going to have another transmission main. And they will bear the cost, the wholesalers will at that time, if we have to do that. I don't know that, I think these cost studies are important. I just think that we have to pay too much to go get them done.
Yeah.
That's what my
That's the
problem
only
is.
way if that's the only way we can actually realize the true revenue coming into us to cover our costs.
If we,
I think it's a necessary evil.
Oh, I agree.
I don't like them either.
I don't like them, but I agree. We have to have them
but
because of the contract.
we would do it. I mean, we would, if we needed it, because there was a time when we were treading water and just trying to make ends meet. That's when we went out and did the cost of service study in 2012. Since then, we've been, you know, have the money to do what we need to do, and we're going to expand on some programs within the city, and that's going to be beneficial, like transmission. We're going to do distribution piping. Well, we can do that with our revenue because it's our revenue, but we wouldn't go out for a cost of service study until we saw that we were losing money. Matt mentioned another great thing about wholesaling our water is that because we wholesale out at the end of our systems, because when we go to Oak Grove and Lafayette, that's the last customer we have just before it hits them. We turn that water over every day because it's going on to them. So our customers in Independence have the water is turned over daily because we're selling that out the other end of the, that's a great point. It's kind of value added. You don't really think about it, but those folks along the Pink Hill line or the Truman Road line that go all the way to Lafayette County, if that was just us serving those customers, it'd be like a long dead end. Well, that long dead end, quite honestly, wouldn't be there if we weren't wholesaling it. We wouldn't run it in the middle of nowhere and not be able to turn that water over. But anyway, that's a good point. So-
you need a motion to.
Well, yeah, if you, what I'm telling you is that Sugar Creek has already passed it, already accepted it. I have it on the agenda for November the 4th to go to our city council for approval of the Sugar Creek 20-year renewable contract. I explained why I believe that we should do that. I ran it through the law department. Out of courtesy, I'm bringing it to you, and then I already have turned in the information, so I can't go and say I have a unanimous decision from the PUAB. It would be nice if I did, and then if something came up, I would say that, yes, we did take it. If somebody, a council member asked, we ran it through the PUAB, we had a unanimous, or we had whatever the vote is, and I would say that, yes, it was approved. Or I could pull it off if you
Sarah?
feel it.
Sarah, does the legal department think everything's kosher on it?
Yeah, Dan and I have worked on this for about a month now, so it looks great. It's went through our legal department, went through Sugar Creek's legal department. They had questions, and we worked everything out.
Okay.
So I move that PUAB approve the Sugar Creek contract. I'm sorry. I move that PUAB approve the Sugar Creek contract.
All right, second it.
Any discussion?
Yes, it should be unanimous.
I still would like for us to do a cost of service study as soon as possible. That'd be my only objection.
So would you do, okay.
That'd be it.
Well, I mean,
No response.
Can I say, the water plant, treatment plant down there? You know where it's located, right?
Yeah.
In Sugar Creek?
Yeah.
We got,
A little bit about that.
Did you have something?
so value added. No, I'm good.
Just don't have
Yeah, but-
condemn the property down there.
Okay.
We do pay, just so you kind of know, the plant is located in Sugar Creek. We actually have Kansas City Power and Light is the vendor there.
Yeah.
They have a gross receipts tax of an effective 11 point something %. So it's a little higher. So yes, unanimous decision sounds good because they have other options available to them should we not agree to this.
Call for a vote.
Roll call?
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Ferdinand Land,
Yes.
Joe Zach,
yes.
Mark McDonald,
Yes.
Rick Dreyer,
Yes.
Jerry Atkins.
Yes. Okay, contract's approved, Dan.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much for your report and all the good work that you do.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you for all the presentation and all that you do for us in this wonderful city.
And all the cities for that matter.
And all the surrounding cities.
Okay, reports. WPC.
WPC.
Just I was going to add one thing. We did remove one thing from that contract. They had an interconnect that they used to bring their water in from Kansas City into Sugar Creek. They had a meter pit in that I believe that nobody knew that meter pit was there until we did this contract. Larry did. If somebody's been in this thing in the last 30 years, I've got photos that why we're going to be taking this meter pit out. It's an interconnect with us, but we're going to be removing it. I just thought afterwards I'll show you some nice pictures.
People sleep down there. Hope not. Yes.
At the plant?
Okay, WPC.
Just one thing, we had our 90% design review about 2 weeks ago for the plant upgrade for lime stabilization. Hoping to have that back, final plans here next week or the week after. After that, we'll put it out for bid and looking to get started first of the year.
What is that again?
The lime stabilization for the plant upgrades, instead of doing the incineration, doing the land applying. Yeah. So
How long has the process been?
we're right at probably a year.
Yeah.
So if you look at the timeline, we're about 3 weeks behind. So we're actually doing pretty good. We've had the engineer go back and make a few changes, so it's kind of more on us than it is on them.
I know it's not your department, but I see they're working on 42nd Street.
Yep. Public Works
Now
is.
they're hiding around that.
I was waiting for you to say something about it.
Not me. I'm just trying to get along. Do you guys have plans for the byproduct from the new process to sell the fertilizer?
Yes, that's part of the design with HDR, who's doing all the design work. Part of their process is to find the person or the group that's going to come in and haul it off and land apply it. So we won't be doing it. We'll be contracting with another group.
So we do have a process, so it's just not going to stack up there.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Do you get the money then?
No.
You want to fertilize your farm?
Any other comments from members on the WPC? Okey-doke. Well, Water, we pretty much heard from you. Got anything else you want to say?
No, I just would brag on our staff when we had that main break on Nolan, and that was some unusual conditions. There was a tunnel underneath there that used to lead. The students could walk from one side of 24 to the other. So that 12-inch line had an offset to go underneath that, and that's where the leak was.
20 feet, right?
Yeah, it's deep. It was too deep. We didn't want to be sending our people down there having large equipment, but fortunately I was out of town. Give it to Matt. so it worked out just perfect for me. But I mean, the staff, how they responded and of course, the part that we didn't really talk about too much, the state highway department was closed on Monday. It was a holiday, which is why I was off. My wife works for a bank and why I was out of town. So it's kind of, the timing of it, how we turned that around and how our staff turned that around. And the good news was it also exposed that where we thought the 30-inch, Mark, you mentioned something about a 30-inch we might have a leak on.
Right.
Well, that's what was causing a leak, was not the 30-inch, it was the 12-inch. And it was just getting ready to blow, and we just didn't know it. We were just trying to find it. But so our staff handling that was a great thing, I think. And I know you guys give me the kudos and Matt the kudos, but in reality, our staff responds to these things on a daily basis, do a great job, and I'm very proud of them.
Matt, did you go down the tunnel?
I did not go down the tunnel.
You did drill a hole in it, though.
Do you know?
We did.
Do you know who did? Because in 1959, I lost something.
I know you can find that.
I doubt that's in there, Larry.
It was pristine inside of it still, I'll tell you that.
Christine, is that what you said?
Yeah, it was like they closed it yesterday.
Now I know why
You guys are thinking bad.
We know you, Larry.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
All right.
IPO.
I guess I'll serve as the IPL representative since Mark's out of town and all that stuff. I think the main thing that we're working on right now is trying to finalize the rates and stuff like that. We've gotten a draft of the report from Burns and McDonnell on the rate study. We're reviewing it. Hopefully, we'll have our comments back to them. So we should hopefully have a draft report from them by next week. Would be my guess that once we get it, we'll definitely send it out to you ahead of time. Once we have that, we've been working on trying to take what they have said and modify it to meet what the council has requested, with the 6% for everybody, to make the adjustments for that. So that's what we're spending our time working on. Our goal is to be able to present it's an aggressive goal, but hopefully by the next PUAB meeting next month, we'll have the proposed rate schedules and be able to talk through that to you guys.
Have we interviewed any applicants for the director?
I have not heard of anything for the general manager's position.
Okay.
What's the schedule with Southwest and Oneida, that whole process?
Okay. We have the agreement with Oneida. I'm still trying to figure out if it's Oneida. I believe it's Oneida. that we will take the capacity. We are waiting for the results from the SPP transmission study. That should be completed. The plan is that they're telling us is by November 15th that we'll have the results back. You know, the preliminary results look good, but hopefully we'll have the final results by then and everything. And then once we have that, then we can move forward to finalize everything and start it. And we have started notifying SPP of our intent to shut down Blue Valley effective next year. So we've started that process, and we should, you know, June 1st would be, or June 30th, I should say. No, I guess it's June 1st would be the latest date. We're trying to see if there's any way we can notify them that it could be potentially a month or two sooner. But we're going with that will be closed by the end of May, basically June 1st. Because that's when our requirement, and that's when the Oneida contract would start to take place.
That's what I was going to ask. That starts June the 1st?
Yes.
And that's already been signed, sealed, and delivered?
As far as I know, everything is signed and sealed. It's just contingent on getting the favorable results from SPP transmission.
Do we have a preliminary plan on how we're going to handle the closing?
I would have to defer to Mark and company on that. I do not know. Or I'm sure there is one being developed, but I've not been informed of it.
Are all costs considered with this decommissioning across the board? You know, what it's going to cost to close everything down, haul off? Are there going to be some hidden things there that's going to pop up?
There's been nothing looked at during a complete, you know, tear down or anything like that. The costs that are being looked at right now are more the labor and to effectively, I believe, mothball it, the facilities. There's nothing in there to do a demolition or anything to that effect. That has not been considered. Okay. And it won't be considered unless we're being asked to do that.
Anything else? Okay, I do want to add something right here, and that is, Brian, would you explain to us a little bit about Brian, would you explain to us a little bit about the 3 sheets you passed out? One on each of the companies or utilities?
Yes. So, first of all, I'd like to introduce Cindy Gray to you if you hadn't met. Cindy is our Chief Financial Officer and has been here for 8 or 9 months. I would say in the future, you'll probably see Cindy here instead of myself as, again, the Chief Finance Officer.
Good deal.
Yes. Yeah. You're welcome. You're quite welcome. And the only reason Cindy has been unable to this point has been because since she started, I've pulled her off of a lot of the accounting, and she's focusing very specifically on making sure our new payroll system is going through. Priority-wise, be honest with you, to ensure that all of our employees are paid properly and on time and everything, is we pulled her off that. So you're going to see some of the delay. That's some of the delay that you've seen on some of these reports. I do have some financials for you. As you said, there's 3 separate ones for each fund. A little bit more background is in the past, the board had received what we'd call full accrual accounting, like look at just like a business, if you can imagine, of course. That's the idea of the utilities to run it as a business. However, that's also difficult to see on a management basis, on a month-to-month management basis, because the full accrual basis doesn't really lend itself to budget. Like, okay, how are we doing so far this year on each month? And so our challenge was to develop reports to you that can show you where things are on a monthly basis. Like, okay, revenues is here, expenses here we are this part to the year. And then at the end of the year or on a quarterly basis, we'll do the full blown gap basis reporting as that you would have been used to. And then also we'll make sure and to ensure that we have the proper FERC accounting for it too, which we understand the importance of that. So it has been a little difficulty pulling this information. The staff that was here when the system was set up are no longer here. So it's taken us a little bit of going back and saying, okay, this is how you set it up. Why did you set it up that way? And then for us to unwind and then rebuild. But we hope that we have in front of you is that a report that's useful for you. I will say all along, staff-wise, since the implementation, they've always been able to go online and see the status of all the accounts, revenues, expenditures. But it's just been, you can see it online, and if you want, I could have Cindy pull it up online and show you what it looks like. But to be able to just then print it, it seems like you should just push a button. But it doesn't really work that way because there was like budget type accounting. The account numbers were just a little different than what lend itself to print, to report. Regardless, they're here now. So the first thing I would say, so I'm on the water pollution control, one I just randomly picked up here. Again, it's based on a budget basis, which means that when we enter into a contract, we count that as an expense as soon as we enter into a contract. It's a basis that we call a resource available basis, as opposed to a gap basis, the other accounting basis, which is the value of the organization. In this case, we're looking at, here are the resources we say we have available to do these services this year. And so what we want to do is when we're recording revenue, record it as soon as we are reasonably sure we're going to receive it. But then on the expense side, we record it not when the cash goes out, but when we enter into a contract. That's the most conservative way, so you know that money is, the resources are there to do it. So that's the first thing you'll see on the expenditure. On the far right column is the percent actual. So we're 17% through the year. So anything that again, kind of look at that, you might see some items be more seasonally adjusted than others, especially when we get into the power, as opposed to WPC. Another highlight I would show here, and you'll see this on all three reports, is the investment income. In this case, we had budgeted $55,000. So far, we're at $76,000, which gives we're well over budget already 2 months into the year, and that was a very planned. Probably two things. One, you had a very conservative budgeting of what we thought the interest rates would be, but then also Cindy and I stepped back and reevaluated the investment program of the city, and that was like one of those priorities we're looking at. Are we making sure that we're getting the best we can for the ratepayers? And it was a very conservative investment plan, kind of an idle, kind of sitting back. And we're actively investing now. So you'll see a result of that hopefully throughout the year, that we are getting much better returns on our investment. And then finally on this, we have on this particular report, we say excess of revenue over financing sources. And in the middle of the column, it says for the WPC so far in these 2 months, revenues over expenses were $1,633,000. So it reads like an income statement. It is an income statement. But here's where it gets a little bit different than what a full GAAP report would be. We're showing ending unassigned fund balance at $12.2 million. What that $12.2 million are what we're saying.
Yeah, I'm not following where you're at.
Oh, okay. It's midway down the sheet. It's ending unassigned fund balance.
Are you on water or WPC?
WPC. I'm sorry.
What are you on?
We could pull this up online if you want to.
Second to last number in the middle.
Second to last number. Oh, okay. Oh,
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Dan just does everything.
It's my day.
Yeah.
That's why he's here.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So $12.2 million, that is saying that those are the current resources that are available to fund operations. What this does not include, this does not include the cash that is setting aside for customer deposits. We've taken deposits, we've set aside. This is not, on other sheets you'll see, or you won't see it, reserves for a bond issue. If we were required to have reserves set aside, you won't see that in that amount. If we have some inventory items would not be in there. Basically, anything that we can't turn into cash within 30 to 60 days are not going to be in that balance. And that, again, is the idea of resource-based, budget-based accounting. It's resources available. Other things that would not be included on that. Yeah.
It's basically cash on hand.
It's cash on hand. Technically, it's current. It's what we call the current ratio, if you know that. So it's cash plus receivables that we feel we can turn in 30 to 60 days, minus current liabilities is what that amount is.
I got a question for you. Can you talk to us about capital outlays, the original plan versus original budget versus amended?
Yeah, that's a great example. So
that's a what?
So the $4.5 million that you see is the original budget.
Yeah.
Those would have been. You can correct me at any point, Dan. Right. Those would be. Here's what they were looking at for the current year capital expenditures. Right.
I see that
So
on
then
every
you-
one of the utilities.
So then you see then a $14 million in this case for water, and what that is.
For WPC.
I'm sorry, for WPC, sorry. And so what you see, what that $14 million represents is a $10 million increase. That was for projects that had been authorized in prior years that weren't completed in prior years, and it's carried forward and increased up to the budget in that way. Does that, so
The
you
question
author,
I have is, one of the big issues, let me be on hold.
One of the big issues that's come up with the whatever the other committee is called, with the mayor and Councilman Huff and Mr. Van Camp, is it been about capital and things that have been put on a capital budget that probably should not have been put on a capital budget, because it's been on the capital budget since Dan first started at since dirt. So someone reviewing that and taking capital items off there that it doesn't seem like we're ever going to do it.
so that's a great question. It is a great question because what I didn't say, and I turn to you. So what you do not see in this $12.2 million
Yeah.
are the capital projects that's been authorized in the past that have not been completed. So I believe, say 11 million for water.
Yeah.
So there's about $11 million in water projects. Does that sound about right for you? 9 million in water projects that have been started or authorized in the past that has been carried forward into that capital budget line, if you will. That $12 million you see does not include those items. Now, staff and the department heads, I'm hoping or reviewing, or they would be the ones that could bring you those lists and say, here's those capital projects that we've reserved out of the cash balance, that we're holding cash balance aside for future capital projects that's been authorized. So does that make sense for you guys? Okay. So we do have those balances. They're pulled out of that. If they weren't there, this one would be 23 million.
Yeah, I think we probably should, as a committee, should request a listing of everything that's on that list of capital projects, so that we can have an oversight of things that are going into the capital outlays, because that is the biggest difference between your budgeted and your amended side on every one of these. So that's an important thing to deal with.
And how large they are.
I would turn it over to
Right.
to these folks.
Well, how long each one of those items been on the list?
dating back.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it. I think they all could provide that, and we can.
It always goes to Dan. I like that. Matt's
He's capital man.
You gotta throw somebody on that sword.
Those projects were approved but not funded necessarily. They were approved. We were approved to move forward if funding was available to do those projects. Some of them were put on there when we were looking at regulations coming into play, and they're still debating on, federal regulations, and we've got some projects that we've put in there to where if they say you need to go, we've got the money approved to spend on that. Now it's not like money in the bank sitting there for it, but that's why.
Well, somebody that's has a negative attitude could come up and say, boy, it looks like somebody's trying to dip into the reserves as quickly as they can. And without having the backup documentation behind those things, I think that's exactly what that would show. Would it not?
So we're only going to spend money on things that are approved by the council. So say what example that Matt was kind of alluding to, say the EPA says we have to quit discharging lime sludge to the Missouri River.
Right. So
we
has
have,
this
we have
14
money,
million been approved by the council?
The council would have approved in a capital budget that we'd be authorized to do that. But we never have funded that yet. So if a project was ever going to be approved, we'd have to take it to council and say, first off, we're going to study it. Second off, that once we get it studied, how are we going to correct that? And in say that case, we were going to say we couldn't discharge the Missouri River, then how are we going to discharge it? So there would be all kinds of, but every item of that would have to be council approved. PUAB would bring everything back through, but we don't have the funding for that set aside currently. We just know that it was approved to review it.
It just makes it not as clear as the rest of the report, is all I'm saying.
Why would it be in a budget if you don't have the money?
Just the way the city council has always had. It's kind of a strange deal. You have a budget, annual budget, but we also have something ran through the planning commission that's a capital thing, but never talks about money. It makes no sense to me, but that's just the way it's always been. So to answer your
So the question is, how much does the water department have in fiscal year 2019? I hope that's right.
I'll have to have Brian answer that because
on capital. How much can they spend this year? And if it's equal to $14,034,546, I'm with you.
WPC. So I'll take a stab at that. So you may have seen Cindy and I kind of shaking our heads, just because the way that this works is a little bit different than our past career has shown it. Usually, so the way that our system works is it just automatically increases the budget authority, and that's what you're seeing there. Anything that's happened in the past or has been budgeted for in any past fiscal years, approved and adopted by the council, if it hasn't been if it hadn't been completed, it rolls up into the next calendar budget because the statute or the charter is based on each calendar year. So the theory behind this, the way the charter set up and how this is ran through is, well, if they were authorized in their budget to do a $5 million project last year, they just haven't got to it yet. It just automatically gets increased into next year's fiscal budget to do that project. And that's why you're seeing it go from 6 million to 14 million. It wasn't something that they went to council action for. It just basically is the system says, oh, it was authorized. We're rolling it forward because it wasn't completed last year. Dan's exactly right, though, is before you actually spend that, you still do have to do the authority to go through the process. The other alternative, which is probably, I'm looking from the way we've done, is basically you start over at zero. Basically, it's every year starts over at zero, and then you reappropriate those projects. It does, in a large organization, it takes a lot of planning. You got very brilliant, obviously, people here. But what it does take is just a level of planning we just haven't done here yet.
A year ago, water pollution. A year ago, we approved the solids.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and it's not completed yet. So that amount is in here.
Correct.
Okay, is there any way, maybe this will help us, Mark, is there any way on a monthly basis you could come to us and say, this is where we're at on the capital projects?
So they're looking at me because we've had some trouble with the capital project reporting coming out of our accounting system.
This is going to be televised, and there's people at home right now pulling out their hair, wondering what in the world this city is doing.
Just turn mine white.
Yeah, I can understand if money was actually appropriated and money existed and a project wasn't completed, that it gets rolled over to next year, like your project. That makes sense. But what I'm hearing from Dan is the money never existed. It was just a concept, and that concept got rolled over, but no, the money was never appropriated in a previous fiscal year. And that doesn't make sense to me. And
so it wasn't. I'm sorry. It wasn't appropriated.
I mean,
there is cash. It would just need to be reappropriated by the council.
Well, I'm not sure that's what I heard from Dan.
We didn't set aside money.
They didn't set aside money. They didn't set aside money. That's what I've heard Dan say. I think there needs to be further discussion, and maybe we don't need to do it here today. But I think there's some confusion going on here that needs to be further clarification.
The projects have been approved.
Yeah.
But no monies were appropriated.
Right.
So we can't do the project without getting the funding,
Right.
or having the funding.
But they're showing up in a budget, although the money was never approved. And I think that's the problem.
What about the AMI money?
It's not in there.
It's not.
It's not.
No.
Where's it at?
It's not in there.
No, where is it at?
Where's it at?
So let me make a couple of other comments. I think
It's not in
I
there.
don't want to beat that one up any further, but I think it needs to be looked into a little further. A couple other comments. Could we have you come back with another report that shows the final fiscal year report for last fiscal year? Double down. I'd like to just see how we ended up with the fiscal year. And then the second thing is, and maybe this is too complicated, but I find this report challenging for my feeble mind, that I don't know what percentage of July and August is.
Okay.
And I think it would be easier if you computed what the actual dollar amount we should have had for July and August. And then we could see what the budget amount for July and August was compared with the actual.
Do you spread it throughout the year, your budget?
I mean, you can assume that it's going to be a straight line. I know it isn't always, but assume a straight line.
Yeah.
And then we could see the actual budgeted for July for the year to date versus the budgeted.
So,
Marlon,
yeah, we'll
straight line normally.
Well, but it's challenging to.
Well, we'll first of all, we'll take a look at that. What we don't want to get too many columns going. I did just ask Cindy to put the year to date for the same month on here. So if I don't want to add too many columns, but I don't
want another column. I just want to have, rather than percentages, I could have what you know what I mean.
We'll see.
Okay.
We can do that, but I would still like to. A lot of people looked at that percentage, and we could put 17% of the year gone by in the title, just to get an idea on that. But I do want to get back to this fund balance question and appropriated dollars versus not. If we added back in all the appropriated past authorized projects into this $12 million balance, you would then have $23 million. Okay,
For just that one entity?
for just that one entity.
Okay, okay.
So what that $12 million is current assets, which is our cash receipts, current receivables, those things we can turn 30, 60 days, minus current liabilities we can have to pay out in 30, 60 days. Then we subtract from it the amount that has been set aside for current and future, current projects that are in the pipe. Now, whether or not there is a project that water wanted to do, but it didn't get authorized by council at some point, that may not be in there. But we will get you a list of the $9 million worth of capital projects that we have taken out of that cash balance of the 23 million. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
I want to be really clear. I mean, we talk about spreading and confusion stuff. We're pretty comfortable. I'll say I'm very comfortable about how much cash the city has and how much funds are available, and that the reports, it's taken a while, but again, I want to reassure this board that we've kept track, make sure every customer has the exact dollars in their accounts that should have been, that every project has been accounted for and dollars accounted for. I know some of these maybe we're saying a little as fun, but we're pretty serious with this, and we apologize for some confusion on this, but this is not something that I'm confused about, and it's just a matter of me being able to report it. Okay.
I still want to know where the AMI money is.
So you asked that question. I didn't have a chance to respond because I think something else was brought up.
All right.
The AMI money, and I don't recall how much would have been out of WPC. I think it was maybe 2 million or a million.
Total
or
of 9
whatever.
million, wasn't it?
Okay. So
15 million.
water was 15. We're looking at a WPC report right now. If AMI was still a glimmer in the eye or whatever, this report would say $11.2 million.
Okay.
Because we would have taken that AMI, that $1 million for the AMI, and put it over to the project accounting, as I was just explaining.
Okay.
Okay. I think it was February or March where we just said, okay, that's not currently happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that cash went back into what we're calling unassigned
Oh, okay.
cash.
All right.
So that AMI dollars, there's no such thing as AMI dollars anymore. It's part of this pool
back into each
of dollars.
one. Okay.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you. That's all.
Again,
I know.
I just want to be real blunt with that this is not, we are taking this very seriously. Okay.
I understand. So am I.
Brian, thanks so very
Understandably.
much for the report, and we've asked for this for months, and maybe we don't quite understand all of it. Maybe there'll be more questions, Cindy.
I
But
think
to the
this will
both of you,
develop.
thanks so very much, because this is something that, well, it's very important, and we've asked for it, and you've done it.
Right.
So thank you.
One last thing on this, at the very bottom number, I calculated what 63 days worth of cash would be. So you would see, so for instance, WPC, 63 days of cash is 7.5 million.
Same
So-
with Paramount.
Same with Power Light. You see that on all.
So is that in the 15 million?
No, it's just informational only, just as a, hey, by the way, oh, yes.
It
Yeah,
is
it would be
in the
right. Right.
the other figure.
It's not netted against that or anything. It's just kind of a, hey, of this $12 million, 7.5 million of it would represent 63 days. So I could, if you want, we could do the other calculation of how many days does that actually equal? That may not be a bad idea.
So it is part of that. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay, moving to board comments if we can.
Thank you, Cindy.
Several things I want to bring up. Joe Zach drove back from Denver. No, not Denver, from Dallas, where they had the tornado the other day. He was called out and especially came to the meeting today. And I want to call you out and say thanks lots for what you do and how you do it.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
You're the best,
I learned that
Josette.
through Power and Light, and I want to say something. Power and Light and water, I guess the citizens don't realize what they've got. The only time they can complain is when it doesn't work. And when's the last time you threw your light switch on and it didn't work? Or your water tap? Or you flushed the commode, you know?
Great. Okay,
I'm just saying, it's great.
something
By the
that-
way, $2 billion you're estimating, North Dallas.
Wow.
Something that I'm going to do that we'll have to clean up later is I want to appoint you as chairman of your subcommittee, and you as, that's Larry's subcommittee, and Mark as his subcommittee, and refer you to your manual, which says on page 3, down there under committees, number 3, subcommittees or committees are open to the Missouri Open Meetings Law. So we need to notify Christina when you're going to meet, where you're going to meet, how you're going to meet. And Sarah, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yes, please, sir.
I think you guys covered it. You just have to have your 24-hour notice of any meeting. It's going to be open to the public, so we need to have it at a place that's accessible to the public, time and place. Have a tentative agenda. So what we're going to discuss.
What you just said. What was the last thing you just
A
said?
tentative agenda. So have an agenda that what you're
Okay.
going to talk about that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the public knows what you're talking about.
Resubmit that to
I believe Christina's going to handle that.
To
yes.
Christina.
Okay.
Wow, that's more for you, Christine.
Yeah.
Put in for a raise.
But that does not prevent you one at a time to talk on the phone about whatever you need to talk about. What a good old boy you are and all that. Thanks for that. Okay, that, and then our next meeting, do we need to have a special meeting, you guys?
No.
Okay, I don't think so either. Regular meeting should be, where's the paper on that?
Going
What's
on
that, Christina?
November 21st.
21st?
November 21st?
Yeah.
Okay. November 21st, the next meeting, we don't need to have that approved by vote. No.
No.
Make sure it's okay with everyone to
Yeah,
attend. It's
okay.
the week before the holiday, so.
Okay, okay, that's my stuff. Anybody else have anything as
I got,
member comments? Yeah.
I got one. Sarah, did we ask for a report last week or last month at the special meeting on the litigation of the court ruling? And you said you were going
Oh, the bondurance
to.
decision?
Yeah.
Our city councilor, Shannon Marcano, is assigned to that. So any legal opinion that comes out of the city comes from her.
Oh,
So she is working on that.
okay. Is she going to bring it or are you going to bring it?
I haven't checked in with her about it, so I'm not sure. But
We'd
I
like-
will get with her.
We'd like to hear your opinion before we get into it.
Okay.
Always like to hear your opinion.
Well, you asked for a formal legal opinion, and that will come from the city councilor.
Well, give me your other opinion.
Oh, wait.
Any opinion? Okay, anything else from the members?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
No, well,
Back that truck up, buddy. Nobody's heard me yell yet, so.
Oh.
So, thank you for the word on the SPP thing, Robert, and I truly hope that we're working on a preliminary plan on the closure of Blue Valley Power Plant when it comes to personnel and those kind of issues. Does anybody, or I guess to Robert, do we have an update on the PUAB approved motion to analyze the costs and benefits of purchasing additional energy and closing down our combustion turbines? Robert's giving me a blank stare. I don't know what that means.
I'm going to give you a blank stare because I'm trying to think if Mark had talked about something. So I'm going to have to say, no, we don't have updated. We'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, so make sure the minutes show that we questioned it again. Thank you for the financial reports. Appreciate that. One other thing how do we handle street lights and traffic lights that are not functioning properly, do they call into the Power and Light? Because I'm getting reports that we got a whole string of street lights that are burned out, and we don't seem to be dealing with that. How does somebody that lives on a street that's got 5 or 6 street lights out report them to you for you guys to fix?
I would,
here we go.
I would assume they would be calling our trouble dispatch or our trouble line to say, hey, we've got outages. I'm not knowing that for sure. I would assume that would be the procedures. I know where I live in KCPL, I had a street light out by my house, and I just called KCPL and said, here's my address, here's a street light, it needs to be fixed, and they eventually got to it.
I guess my question would be, there's a chance that people are not calling that in.
That is probably what it is, because I think even in your electric bill, there's numbers to call for water and you know, street light.
And I guess there is a street light hotline
and so
that-
forth. So people
to
aren't
report
calling
to.
in,
So
they're just
people-
complaining.
Yeah, so people would
Robert,
just report it to that.
You don't have Independence Power and Light?
Huh?
You don't have Independence Power and Light?
I do not live in the Independence Power and Light District, no.
We won't let him.
How dare you come in and tell us what we should charge then?
One last thing. I'd like to thank everyone that went to the Touch the Truck event, and for the folks that were down there. That they don't donate their time to bring those trucks down there, do they? The employees?
We didn't have it there, so I don't know. I don't.
Was Power and Light down there? Hopefully we didn't pay people overtime to be down there with Touch the Truck, did we?
I might actually defer to Councilman Huff. He might know that answer better than me.
Do you work for IPNL?
He doesn't work for it now, but I don't. In the past, I don't know how they did it.
Shit. Was it last Saturday?
I don't know what you're talking about. A couple of weeks ago.
I don't know if they volunteer their time or not.
Okay. Could you take a note to get back with us on that?
Okay. I'll see what I can find out.
You know, overtime is such a big issue, and that's something we should not be paying overtime for.
Okay.
I do know that when they do like the lime in the rodeo, that's all a voluntary thing. And city doesn't put any money up for that. So I'm sure that the other departments have things going like that too. But it's all voluntary, and it's just a good chance for everybody to meet.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and adjourn. I don't think we have to call the roll for that. Unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody, for all your participation. It's been a great meeting.
I was gonna say.